Hello, I'm Michael Dunn, Board President of the Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center. Welcome to the 14th Annual Fit for a King Summit, which is LaFox's annual tribute to the work and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This is our first virtual summit, and we miss seeing you in person. Before we begin, we'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that anytime we talk about housing, we're also talking about land. While we may be virtual this year, the land that we occupy is indigenous land. I'm coming to you from what we now call New Orleans, but it was once known as Olbancha, a place of many tongues, and home to tribes such as the Chitimacha, Utupac, Isak, Homa, and Choctaw tribes, among others whose names and languages we no longer know. As we talk today about displacement and resistance in Louisiana, we hope to honor this indigenous history and the ongoing struggle against colonialization of this land. We know that this is particularly important to remember as we combat environmental racism, our topic for today, which has had devastating impacts on indigenous communities for generations. We also recognize that indigenous leaders have been at the forefront of fighting for environmental justice. The past year has been incredibly challenging and painful in so many ways. We have lost family members, neighbors, and friends to the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly in communities of color that have been hit hardest due to generations of systematic racism. We watched in horror as George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and too many others were murdered. We've seen desperation grow as policymakers' inability to prioritize health and safety has put more than 30 million people at risk of eviction. And most recently, we've seen rapidly escalating white supremacist violence. Despite all of this, our communities have continued to stand strong to protect each other, to provide mutual aid, and to keep fighting for justice. We're inspired by them, and we're honored to highlight their work throughout our summit this year. Fit for a King 2021 will happen over 3 days. Today, we will be discussing environmental racism with a panel called From Red Lines to the Front Lines, COVID Collides with Environmental Racism in Louisiana, in a keynote address by Colette Pishon Battle, Executive Director of the Gulf Coast Center for Law and Policy. We will also hear a performance by vocalist Michaela Harrison and present our annual award for Courage Award. Next Thursday, we will be discussing connections between gentrification and policing. And on January 28th, speakers will explore the eviction crisis. You can see the full agenda at fitforaking.org. Now, there's a couple housekeeping items. Please make sure to fill out your evaluations today. We carefully review feedback and use it to improve this event each year. We will share a link to the evaluation at the end of the day. If you have to log out before the end of the program, you'll see the evaluation pop up immediately when you log out. If you have any questions for the speakers, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. If you have technical questions about Zoom or LaFox work throughout the day, you can reach us by email at info@lafairhousing.org or chat the center staff in the chat box. Now, before we get started, I just want to share a little bit of information about the Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center. Our mission is to eradicate housing discrimination throughout the state of Louisiana. We know that housing discrimination leads to segregation and that neighborhoods and communities are not treated fairly. Housing discrimination has to end if this nation is ever going to achieve racial and economic justice. We work to end housing discrimination in several ways. LaFox Education and Outreach Team provides fair housing trainings to make sure people throughout our community know their rights and responsibilities. LaFox policy staff work at local, state, and national levels to push policies that make housing more fair and accessible to everyone. Our enforcement team investigates complaints about fair housing violations to find out when and where housing discrimination is occurring. Staff also assist victims with filing administrative complaints and lawsuits to hold discriminators accountable. Our home ownership protection program provides counseling services for homeowners facing disclosure. And lastly, LAFLAC added an eviction defense program this year to provide legal representation for residents facing eviction during the pandemic, including undocumented community members who may not qualify for other services. We are a statewide agency that works in tandem with partner organizations and community members and couldn't do this work without you, so thank you. We would love for you to get more involved in our work through working with us to offer fair housing training to your staff, members, clients, or students, by making referrals, by providing input on policies that impact their community, by alerting us if you see housing discrimination in any form, by completing our action alerts, or becoming a mystery shopper or tester. You can read more about our work at lafairhousing.org. Finally, this year has shown us how important it is to be agile and able to shift our work as needed depending on the needs in our community. Your support makes that possible. We are asking people in our network to consider signing up as a recurring donor in any amount today. Please sign up today at lafairhousing.org/donate. Now I would like to introduce Jaslyn Duncan, LAFLAC's Home Ownership Protection Director, who will be moderating the first panel.
Good morning. My name is Jaslyn Duncan. I am the Director of Homeownership Protection. This morning we'll be talking about climate justice, and we will be hearing from panelists Sharon Levine from Rise St. James, Louisiana Hurst from the residents of Garden Plaza, and Monique Harden from the Deep South Center for Environmental Justice. Before we get started, we will be showing a video of Rise St. James. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm sorry for a little bit of a technical glitch, and we really appreciate your patience. My name is Renee Corrigan. I'm the Director of Education and Outreach at the Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center. We're just going to briefly pause before we start our morning panel to invite our interpreters to talk with us a little bit about the interpretation that they're providing today, and then we will go into the panel. Thank you so much.
Saludos todos, mi nombre es Renee Corrigan y soy la directora de educación aquí en LAFLAC. Vamos a tomar una pausa para poder darle paso a los intérpretes que introduzcan sobre la justicia del lenguaje. Muy buenos días, hola a todos, mi nombre es Lila y mis pronombres son ella y ella. Y estoy aquí hoy día con mi compa y cointérprete María Luisa, sus pronombres son ella. Somos miembros del colectivo de justicia del lenguaje Bancha Lenguas, basado en Bulbancha, Louisiana, también conocido como Nueva Orleans.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lila, and my pronouns are she and they. I'm joined today by my comrade and my co-interpreter, Maria Luisa, whose pronoun is she. We're members of Bancha Lenguas Language Justice Collective based in Bulbancha, Louisiana, also known as New Orleans.
Bulbancha es la palabra choctaw que significa la tierra donde se habla muchos lenguajes.
Bulbancha is the Choctaw word, which means the land where many languages are spoken.
Como trabajadores de justicia del lenguaje, nos esforzamos a crear un espacio para que todos aquí presentes puedan entender y ser entendidos en el idioma en que nos sentimos más poderosos.
As language justice workers, we strive to create space for everyone here to understand and be understood in the language in which we feel most powerful.
Hoy proveeremos interpretación simultánea del inglés al español y del español al inglés y también en ASL como parte de nuestro esfuerzo para crear espacios multilingües.
Today, we'll be providing simultaneous interpretation from English to Spanish and Spanish to English. And there is also ASL interpretation today as well as part of our effort to create multilingual spaces.
To create this space together, a few things. Please speak at a slow and steady pace. If you're talking too fast, you'll see us do this hand signal to slow down. Also, please speak loudly and clearly. We will do this hand signal if you're speaking too softly. And keep an eye on the chat in case we send a message to slow down or speak up. Keep your mic on mute when you're not speaking, and if you have headphones, please use them. We also ask one speaker at a time, as interpreters can only interpret one voice at a time, and we don't ever want to be in the position of having to decide which voice to privilege over the other.
Para crear este espacio juntos, algunas cositas. Por favor, hable a un paso lento y constante. Si están hablando muy rápido, nos verán hacer esta señal de manos para ir más despacio. Hablen en voz alta y clara. Haremos esta señal de manos si no podemos escucharte. Échale un ojo al chat por si enviamos un mensaje para ir más lentamente o hablar en voz más alta. Mantén su micrófono en silencio si no están hablando. Y si tienen audífonos con micrófono, por favor, utilízalos. Y una persona a la vez, pedimos eso, por favor. Les intérpretes solamente podemos interpretar una voz a la vez y no queremos estar nunca en la posición de tener que decidir cuál voz privilegiar sobre otra.
You will be able to access the interpretation platform in just a few moments after these instructions.
Para acceder a la plataforma de interpretación en unos minutos después de estas instrucciones,
So if you are using a computer, you will see a globe icon at the bottom of your screen with the word interpretation. Click on it and select the channel with the language of your choice, either English or Spanish.
si están usando una computadora, van a ver un icono de globo al pie de su pantalla con la palabra interpretación. Haz clic sobre él y selecciona el canal de tu lenguaje preferido, inglés o español.
For smartphone or tablet, look for 3 dots that read more. Click on that to make your selection.
Para teléfono inteligente o tableta, busquen 3 puntos que leen más. Haz clic para hacer su selección.
When making your selection, you will see an option to mute original audio to hear only the voice of the interpreter. To hear the original audio, you may leave it unmuted, and you can change your selection at any time.
Cuando hagan su selección, verán la opción para silenciar audio original, para escuchar solo la voz del intérprete. Si desean escuchar el audio original, puedes quitarlo de modo en silencio. Puedes cambiar tu selección en cualquier momento.
Thank you for your commitment to creating a multilingual space. The host will now assign us as interpreters, and don't forget to click on your language of choice. Lastly, don't suffer in silence. If you have any problems with hearing us or the speakers, please send a message in the chat.
Gracias por tu compromiso en crear un espacio multilingüe. El anfitrión ahora nos va a asignar como intérpretes. No olviden de escoger su canal del lenguaje preferido. Y por último, nunca sufran en silencio. Si tienen cualquier problema escuchándonos a nosotros o a los presentadores, por favor, envíen un mensaje al chat.
Good morning again. Again, my name is Jaslyn Duncan. I will be presenting the panelists once again. We've had a slight change to the order of the panelists. One of them was not able to make it. I will introduce the panelists, and then from there, a short video, and then we will begin our discussion. So our first panelist, Sharon Levine. She's from Rise St. James. We have Ludwina Hurst. from the residents of Garden Plaza. Thank you.
Oliver was the love of my life. We were together for 17 wonderful years. He was vibrant and healthy. Then the plants came in. Oliver was diagnosed with COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. He died just a few years later, and it's no doubt that the pollution killed him. I've been to over 30 funerals within the past 5 years. My brothers have cancer. My neighbors are sick, and I'm worried about my children and grandchildren. Now, Formosa Plastics wants to bring one of the largest plants here. The parish council can't let that happen. It's too late to bring back Oliver. I don't want our children and grandchildren to be next.
All right, we will have Miss Sharon Levine to introduce herself and share her stories about her community. Miss Sharon.
Good morning. My name is Sharon Levine. I'm from St. James, Louisiana. I'm the director and founder of a faith-based grassroots organization called Rise St. James. I'm a lifelong resident of St. James. In my area where I live, we have 12 refineries and petrochemical industries within a 10-mile radius. We have 7 districts in St. James, and I live in the 5th district. In the 4th district, we have 9 refineries or petrochemical industries. In 2018, our governor, John Bell Edward, announced a $5.4 billion Formosa plastic plant to come into St. James into the 5th district. It would be only 2 miles from my home. That was when the first time I found out about it. The citizens of St. James didn't know about it. Our public officials approved it. They didn't consult us. I feel like we have too many already. We already cannot breathe the air. The water is not clean and the soil is not productive. So to bring this industry into St. James, we will not be able to breathe the air. We will not be able to live. In 2018, I formed our organization to fight Formosa Plastics. And now, during this fight, we have 3 other industries that's trying to come into the 5th district. We're also going to fight those. We have filed lawsuits against Formosa with the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. Right now, the federal judge in Washington suspended the permit that the Army Corps of Engineers tried to have approved. And a judge from Louisiana also told them to go back and redo their application because the permit that they submitted is obsolete. And it also deals with a lot of racism. Formosa was looking at 5 other sites to build this chemical plant, but they chose a poor Black community like St. James to bring this industry in. We are fighting for our lives because Formosa don't think about the people. All they think about is the profit that they plan to make. Governor John Bell Edward, he won't even stop this industry from coming into St. James because he approved it. He thinks that this plant is going to bring a lot of revenues for the state. My question to him is, if this plant is so wonderful and it's going to bring so much so much revenues for the state, why not put it in his hometown? because we are full. We can't take any more. I don't feel like St. James should be the sacrifice zone for the state. The state could find somewhere else to put this industry. They don't consider the people. They don't consider our lives. They just want to do what they want and get the money that they want. To them, their wealth is their profit. To St. James, our wealth is our enemy. In other words, our health is what we want. If we don't have our health, you can have all the money in the world. You won't be able to enjoy the money because your health will decline. So we want anyone that can help us to stop this industry from coming into St. James, because St. James residents don't want to move, and we want to live, and we want to live healthy, because we already have enough that already have died, and we have a lot that people that are sick, mostly with cancer. So please, we asking everyone to please help rise St. James in this fight to stop Formosa Plastics. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Levine. And next we will have Ms. Ledwina Hurst.
Good morning. My name is Ledwina Hurst. I am a retired nurse. I reside in the Garden Plaza subdivision, located in the Upper Ninth Ward, Desire area of New Orleans, Louisiana. The homes in this area were built on a dump site. This issue has motivated me to serve as an activist fighting for an end to environmental racism and injustice. I am a board member of the Residents of Garden Plaza, Inc. I participate in board meetings, rallies, meet with political leaders and members of organizations in regards to environmental racism and injustice. I also participate to help organize meetings with the residents of our community. The homes in this subdivision were built on 20 feet of toxic soil, the former Agricultural Street landfill site. Construction of the homes were completed in the early 80s and marketed to low and middle income families. The African-American residents were unaware that their newly purchased homes were built on a dump site, which contained over 150 chemicals, with 50 contributing to cancer causes. In 1994, the site was designated as a Superfund site. In 2001, a cleanup was done, removing 2 feet of soil from around some of the homes at the cost of $40 million. It was estimated that residents could have been moved for less. Many residents of this community have been diagnosed with cancer, respiratory diseases, skin conditions, and other illness. Unfortunately, many residents have died as a result of their illness. A report from the Louisiana Tumor Registry that was published in the Times-Picayune found that the cancer rate within the census tract that includes Garden Plaza had the second highest sustained rate of cancer in the state of Louisiana. For decades, residents have fought many legal battles, with none resulting in fully funded relocation for all of the residents. In a civil class action lawsuit, 9 plaintiffs were made whole and attorneys were paid millions of dollars. 54 residents continue to live on this site. Our homes are well kept and manicured with manicured lawns, but the appraisal value of our homes is lower than it would be if our homes were not located on toxic soil. I ask myself frequently the question, is this what I plan to leave my children and grandchildren as generational wealth?
Thank you so much, Ms. Hurst. Thank you for those introductions. So our question that we have for both panelists, Ms. Sharon, I'll have you go first, and then Ms. Lewina, then you can answer second. The question is, the past year has highlighted so many ways that institutions and systems treat Black lives and communities as if they do not matter. How have past discriminatory policies and systemic racism placed your communities at risk? Ms. Sharon, first.
Well, I think it placed our community at risk because by letting all these industries come into our community, first of all, we are at risk. And because we are poor and Black. So these policies, I don't think they go for everyone. It's for certain people. So I think a lot of the policies need to be changed to accommodate all the people, not just some.
All right, inclusive policies, absolutely. How about you, Ms. Lewina?
The residents of Garden Plaza have worked and purchased homes, hoping to obtain the American dream, which turned into an American nightmare. We are tax-paying citizens living on toxic soil. We have invested in this city that has refused to reinvest in us and issues due to the environment. Our residents are dying. I believe that if one Caucasian family had purchased a home on this site, we would have been relocated years ago. Our community organization has teamed up with People's Assembly, a New Orleans-based movement for economic, racial, and environmental justice to continue our fight. We have reached out to our politicians on all levels by making telephone calls, sending letters, inviting them to our community meetings with little or no response. Our fight has also consisted of numerous public protests and media outreach. Our Black Lives Matter also. We are demanding that as a country is crying out under the banner of Black Lives Matter, that the city of New Orleans finally do what is necessary to fight for our Black lives as we yet live. We are asking Mayor Cantrell, as she requests additional resources from the state and federal government, that we be included in that request for a fully funded relocation. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lewina. So for the next question, and this will be for both of you, how has environmental racism contributed to the deadly racial disparities we have seen in the impacts of COVID-19? Ms. Sharon, would you like to go first?
Yes, with the COVID, I think it's a double whammy because we're already suffering with the industry over here in St. James. The emissions are really high. And with COVID, it didn't do any justice to this parish. We have people that died from COVID. We have people that are sick right now as I speak. And we are trying to be protective of our lives and cautious and everything. But we have double. We have COVID plus the industry, the emissions that they are releasing on us. So we have double in our area.
Okay. And Miss Louina, how would you say environmental racism has contributed to the racial disparities with the impacts of COVID-19?
COVID-19 is a health pandemic that we recognize
Miss Louina.
since the beginning. Residents in the Garden Plaza subdivision face both COVID-19, extraordinary cancer rates, and other illness due to the toxic soil and environment that the city of New Orleans built our homes on. Due to the toxic soil that we live on, the underlying conditions, in addition to the fact that most of the residents are senior citizens, puts us at a high risk for COVID-19. We have been forced to shelter and placed on toxic soil. We are enslaved in our own homes.
Thank you so much, ladies. And for our last question, how can people watching this take action now to engage? Do you see any opportunities for the climate justice movement with the new presidential administration? Ms. Sharon, would you like to go first?
With the new administration, I'm trying to be hopeful that the new president will look into our issues, that even if you have to come to St. James and see what we are going through, just by us telling them, they really need to see it. So I'm hoping that the new administration would have the time to sit down and talk with us. If they can't come in person because of the pandemic, at least talk with us on virtual, and let them have more consideration to what's going on around the world, but especially in Louisiana and especially in St. James Parish. One of Biden's speeches, he mentioned St. James Parish in one of his speeches. So I'm trying to be hopeful that he will think about us after he's inaugurated and come to see about us and help us to solve this dilemma. That's what I'm hoping for.
Absolutely. Thank you. And how about you, Ms. Louina? What is the way that you think people could engage, and do you see any opportunities with the new administration?
For years, the board has made numerous attempts to reach out to our Congressman, Cedric Richmond, about our issues without success. However, during this last election, we were able to ask him, along with other candidates, if he supported a fully funded relocation. And he finally stated yes in writing. Hopefully, our mayor, LaToya Cantrell, will actively pursue Congressman Cedric Richmond and collaborate to secure funds to resolve this issue before we experience the loss of one more neighbor. We pray that with the new presidential administration and their take on climate justice, that doors will open for us to receive a check for a fully funded relocation. I'm asking for everyone to engage in our fight by contacting our mayor, LaToya Cantrell, and her administration at 504-658-4900 or 504-658-4945, or they can be emailed at mayor@nola.gov. You can also log into the People's Assembly website at peoplesassemblyneworleans.org or email them at peoplesassemblynola@gmail.com. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you so much, Ms. Sharon, Ms. Lidwina. We have a couple questions from the audience that we would like to ask. First off, and I hope everybody got that information. Hopefully we can get those numbers in the chat box so that the audience can see. So we have a question coming from the audience. And that first question is, what can residents of New Orleans do to help bring about the fully funded relocation for all residents of Garden Plaza that has been thus far emptily promised? So what can be done with the residents of New Orleans? And this is for either one of you.
As I stated, you can contact our mayor, contact our political leaders, Congressman Richmond, and also follow us as we do our rallies, our community meetings at the sites that I gave you on People's Assembly. It would be really appreciated.
Thank you so much. Ms. Sharon?
Well, in St. James, if you contact our local leaders, they will not respond. We have asked them, we've talked to them, we've gone to the council meetings. The people that represent us, they are not helping us at all. So if you want to help us, contact Rise St. James. You can find us on Facebook, on the website. But we have done lawsuits against the industries, against about 3 or 4 of them. And we tried to stop the permits that they're trying to give to these other industries, but the parish officials, they all for it, and the local, the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality, they just administer all these permits whenever they apply for them. So Rise St. James is doing all the work of our public officials. So the only thing I can tell you is to contact Rise St. James. That's our only hope for St. James Parish.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sharon. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, we have another question. Have members of your community taken individual legal actions against the companies that develop the businesses and properties in the hazardous manner? Have there been any class action lawsuits? And have you all been successful? And what barriers have they encountered?
Well, in St. James, we haven't had any class action lawsuits. We haven't had any lawsuits really, to be honest with you. We just had the lawsuits that our attorney did against the chemical plants like Formosa, but not any individual lawsuits or not any class action lawsuits that I know of in St. James. No.
And have you been successful as far as with any litigation?
Not really. Not really, no.
Okay. How about you, Mrs. Louisiana? Have you all filed some type of legal action against the companies? And if so, were they successful?
For the last decades, we have filed lawsuits. We had a class action civil lawsuit, and only 9 plaintiffs were allocated enough money to move off this site. The attorneys were paid millions of dollars. We have had lawsuits since then where we were not made whole. In one incident, we were given maybe from anywhere from a couple of $100 to a couple of $1,000, which would have not brought us anywhere. And we are at this time with a lawsuit with the lawyers at Tulane Law School. However, several of the motions that have been filed has been rejected. We have had lawsuits that went all the way to the Supreme Court, and we're still in our homes in the Garden Plaza subdivision, sitting on a Superfund site.
Thank you so much. So how can the average person contribute to your causes?
In my cause, ask them to talk to the public official for us. Ask them to talk to the governor. If not, go straight to Washington. Ask them to join with us on this fight. Ask them to spread the word. Anything that they can do to help us, we really would appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Miss Louina. Mrs. Louina, how could the average person contribute to your cause?
Presently, we are seeking funds. However, the allocation of those funds have not been finalized. The most important thing at this time, if people will call in, as I stated, to our elected officials, especially the mayor of New Orleans, the governor, our state representative, our congressman in Washington, D.C., to be sure that there are funds allocated. Funds are found for everything else. In New Orleans, $40 million.
Miss Louina, we can't hear you.
I think we're having some technical difficulties.
I
In New
gotcha.
Orleans, $40 million was allocated to put up crime cameras, which, as you know, our crime rate is high right now. So the benefit of those cameras are very questionable as far as I'm concerned. So if you can find money for those things, grants have been granted to raise buildings because of flooding. If you can allocate money for and find money for all of those things, why can't you find the money to remove 54 families whose lives are at stake off of this site?
Thank you so much, Miss Louina. Absolutely. So there's a question about the Green Deal, and I know later on our keynote speaker, Mrs. Pishon, she will be speaking about the Green Deal, but specifically to this audience, should we be advocating and educating the public on the Green New Deal and transitioning to clean and renewable energy? This question is for either panelist.
What you mean? Should we be concentrating on the Green New Deal?
Yes.
I would think so.
Okay. And how about transitioning to clean and renewable energy for your communities?
Yes, I would agree with that because we do need that. We need clean everything so we can survive, so we can live. So yes, the clean new energy, is that mostly for New Orleans? Is that a question for Miss Louina?
That's for both panelists.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
How about you, Miss Louina? How do you feel about the Green New Deal?
The public should be educated on clean air, clean environment, dump sites, because it's very important. Our lives matter. Our health is at risk. The air we breathe every day, along with this COVID-19, is not helping any of us. So it is very, very important that the public is educated on all of these issues.
Okay. Ms. Sharon, this is specifically for you. Can you bring about attention or a conversation about the burial grounds in your communities and the strategies that have been used to bring that to attention?
Well, the burial grounds on Formosa site was discovered by an archaeologist. We found out that the previous owner of the property had a railroad, had pipes to run through the graveyard. And Formosa didn't tell us about the grave site until after Rise St. James brought it to the parish council members. And they wasn't planning on telling our parish officials at all, even though they gave them the approval to build. So the grave site's been there since way back in the 1800s. And they have they had about 200 slaves on that property with one burial site. They have about 3 different grave sites on Formosa's property. And we've been having events on the property. For example, on June of last year, on Juneteenth, we had a celebration out there. They didn't want us to go on the property, but we had to get the judge to let them give us permission to go on the property. And we celebrated our ancestors. And it was a wonderful event out there. But I don't think that anybody should disturb a gravesite. And Formosa was about to do it without letting our parish officials know about it. They lied to them about so many things, and our parish officials will not rescind their decision to stop Formosa from being built in St. James. But they don't care, and they were going to desecrate that gravesite. So yes, we brought it to the attention, and so far, Formosa put a fence around the gravesite, around one gravesite. So we're still working on that also.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. We have reached our time. So I do have one more question. I believe we have time for one more question. And I also noticed in the chat box that there will be a rally. Gordon Plaza residents will be speaking at a rally on January 20th at Duncan Plaza at 3 p.m. Our last question before we wrap up. Aside from the immediate relocation, what support can one contribute to the residents of Gordon Plaza? So that's for you, Mrs. Ledwina.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Okay. And aside from immediate relocation, what support can one contribute to the residents of Gordon Plaza currently?
We can be supported by attending the rallies, writing letters if you do not want to make the telephone calls to our elected officials, attending community meetings, and our protest, our media outreach, which we will be doing on Martin Luther King Day, as you just stated. I ask that people, they can come out to those events, but simply making a telephone call or an email to our elected officials encouraging a fully funded relocation. And because we say fully funded relocation means that we do not want anyone to just decide where they want to put us on another site. We want to be issued a check so that we can purchase our own homes, have enough money to move off this site. It is not something that we're asking for someone to give us. We deserve every penny of it. We were not aware, we were not educated about this before we purchased our homes on this site. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hurst. I believe we have one more question. So, and with respect to people who are seeking to purchase a property, is there something or somewhere that one could look to find out about the history of the property, specifically with the idea of with it having this type of history behind it? Can you hear me?
Sorry. No, I didn't have the question because I went out. I'm keep going out and reconnecting. So we're having some technical difficulties here. So could you repeat that question for me, please?
Absolutely, absolutely. So with respect to someone who's looking to purchase a new home, is there something or somewhere that they could find information or history about the properties or specifically your area? Would you all know, or do you all have any insight about that?
Do we have any insight about homes in our area?
So specifically, if somebody wanted to purchase a property, say in your area, is there any information, or do you all have a website and where they could get more information about the properties or your area, your community?
You can go to the Agricultural Street landfill site. I don't have the exact website. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you.
Okay. And that will give information about the boundaries of this landfill, of this dump site. That was designated in back in 2001. I mean, in 2001, when it was placed on a Superfund site. Or you could go to the EPA Superfund site and possibly you could pull up that information there also. But there is information out there that tells what the boundaries are for this site.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Ms. Sharon Levine and Ms. Louisiana Hurst. That is the conclusion of our panel today. We will have a performance after this. Thank you so much again, ladies.
You're welcome.
And thank you for having me.
On camera. Please be quiet.
All right, well, thank you so much to Jaslyn for moderating the panel and to the wonderful panelists. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to be with us today. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing to make all of our communities safer places and to advocate for your communities. I want to just take a minute now to introduce our performer who's going to be sharing some music with us now. For people who are joining us on the interpretation channel, the performance is going to be in English, so you can either stay on the interpretation channel where you'll hear the performance quiet in the background and an interpretation above it, or you can click over to the English channel by going to that interpretation globe icon at the bottom of your screen, and then you'll be able to hear the performance at full volume. If you do that, one of the songs, we're going to be posting the lyrics in the chat. We don't have translation for both, but you can listen to interpretation for one and read the lyrics for the other in the chat. All right, so we're going to go ahead and bring up Michaela Harrison, who's going to be performing for us today. So Michaela Harrison is an international vocalist whose career is rooted in relaying the healing, transformational power of music through song. Holding a bachelor's degree in international affairs and a master's in Africana studies, she's fluent in French and Portuguese, familiar with Spanish and Swahili, and has an extended repertoire of world music, rendering songs in their original languages. After nearly 2 decades of calling New Orleans home, Michaela has returned to her native Washington, D.C., yet she continues to spend extensive time in Brazil, where she has headlined music festivals and performed at various venues and events. She has toured Jamaica, Japan, France, Germany, Italy, England, Switzerland, the Netherlands, and she's recorded with members of Sweet Honey and the Rock, Bill Summers, Kermit Ruffins, and Mother Tongue. Michaela is currently engaged in a project called Whale Whispering, a musical collaboration on water, healing, and ancestry with humpback whales based in Bahia. Michaela Harrison, welcome. Sorry, you're muted, Michaela.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thanks so much.
Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me. It's a blessing to be here with y'all. Thank you for the good work y'all are doing. I miss New Orleans. It's still home in my heart, so it's good to be here with y'all today. So speaking of home, when I sat to meditate about what would be appropriate to share with y'all today, this is the first song that came to mind. When I think of home, I think of a place where there's love overflowing. I wish I was home, I wish I was back there with the things I've been knowing. Wind that makes the tall trees bend into leaning. Suddenly the raindrops that fall have a meaning, sprinkling the scene makes it all clean. Maybe there's a chance for me to go back now that I have some direction. It sure would be nice to be back home where there's love and affection. And just maybe I can convince time to slow up, giving me enough time in my life to grow up. Time, be my friend. Let me start again. Suddenly my world's gone and changed its face, but I still know where I'm going. I have had my mind spun around in space, and yet I've watched it growing. And if you're listening, God, please don't make it hard to know if we should believe the things that we see. Tell us, should we run away? Should we try and stay? Or is it better just to let things be? Living here in this brand new world might be a fantasy, but it's taught me to love. So it's real to me, and I've learned that we must look inside our hearts to find a world full of love. Like yours, like mine, like So I'm gonna do one more song for y'all today. And this next one is one of my original songs that I wrote while I was there in New Orleans, and that was inspired by thinking about really young Black boys and young Black men, and just the constant dangers that they faced being out on the streets, and then a general song of healing for anyone who feels that they're in need of healing, and affirming the fact that that healing space exists, no matter where we live, no matter where we find ourselves, that there is a space inside where we can access healing. So the hook is pretty easy. I don't know if everybody's muted. If you're not, then it gets kind of janky with everybody singing together. But if you're on mute and you pick up the chorus, feel free to sing along. This is the healing room. Come inside, come inside, come inside, the healing room. Come inside, come inside, come inside, the healing room. Your blood stained with a memory of devastation. Whether your mind knows your history or not. And though there are those who would love to see your elimination, baby, your right to the tree of life is one thing you've got. So come inside, come inside, come inside, the healing room. Come inside, come inside, come inside, the healing room. You've been stumbling along the path of self-destruction. A few addictions and other afflictions are your heirlooms. But remember, your DNA is a spiral that's encoded with survival. And your future lies inside the healing room. So come inside, come inside, come inside, the healing room. Come inside, come inside, come inside, the healing room. From glory to the slave ship, from the auction block to master's whip, those who made you, those who made you, those who made you knew that if Harriet could guide that train to freedom again and again, there's no limit to the wonders you can do. So come inside, come inside, come inside, the healing room. Come inside, come inside, come inside, the healing room. There's no door, there's no lock, and there's no key. No combination, oh no, and no passcode to crack. And if your demons there should chase you, there'll be strong arms to embrace. embrace you. Just remember that your ancestors got your back. So come inside, come inside, come inside the healing room. Come inside, come inside, come inside the healing room. Come inside, come inside, come inside the healing room. Come inside, come inside, come inside the healing Thanks so much for having me, all.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Michaela. Thank you for the healing and the inspiration. I wish that you could hear the applause, but I'm sure everyone is applauding you in their homes. It's hard being virtual, but you brought some sweetness and humanity to this virtual platform. So thank you so much. At this time, I want to introduce Michelle Morgan, who's the coordinator of investigations with the Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center. And she's going to come up now and present LAFAC's annual Award for Courage Award.
Thanks, Renee. The Award for Courage honors those for their bravery and tenacity in the face of adversity and for telling their stories to prevent injustice from continuing to harm others. I am honored to present this year's award to one of our fair housing investigators, or testers as we call them. Testers are community members who pose as home seekers for the purpose of a fair housing investigation. Testing allows housing transactions to be monitored as they happen in real life. Testing provides an unfiltered look at how people are treated and is a valuable tool for helping to determine when discrimination occurs. To protect the anonymity of this year's award recipient, we are using the pseudonym Tester T. Tester T has worked to advance fair housing as a tester with LAFAC since 2016. In that time, Tester T has worked on numerous housing investigations across the New Orleans metro area. Tester T has faced discrimination head-on and has had a positive impact on the community in helping to create more fair and equitable housing for everyone. During one particular investigation, Tester T was subjected to shockingly racist statements, yet remained composed and completed the investigation in a professional manner. Evidence collected during that investigation has led to a federal lawsuit. Fair housing investigations would not occur without the work of people like Tester T, who sacrifice their personal time to help end housing discrimination. Tester T's courage and commitment to holding housing discriminators accountable is inspiring and commendable. And now I will read some remarks from Tester T. I always knew racism and prejudice existed, but I was sure that it almost always happened in the dark, undercover, and disguised as something else, something no one could prove. Over the last few years, the light has been turned on, the covers pulled back, and we have seen people's most inner thoughts and feelings. And it hasn't always been pretty. I've always heard that history repeats itself, but I never expected it to be like this. To be compared to caged animals based strictly on how I show up in the world is comprehensible. For a moment, it caused me to question every loss, every application that didn't result in a callback, and the real reason race needs to be identified when applying to college. As hard as it has been to digest, I'm glad it's no longer undercover. I'm glad to finally confront it so those responsible can be exposed, held accountable, and not continue in positions of power with the opportunity to victimize others. I'm glad to confront it so that my children may not have to. I am glad I have the courage to stand against them as a reminder that hate will never win. To everyone that has been a victim of racism, you are not your experience. You are courageous, you are valuable, and you belong. I appreciate the Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center for all of the great work and everyday efforts to create a nation where we will not be judged by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character. Thank you, Tester T. We applaud you. If you're interested in helping root out discrimination and want to become a fair housing tester, you can visit our website at lafairhousing.org and click on the link to become a tester. There you'll find some brief information on the program and an online application. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And thank you so much, Tester T. So next on our program, I'm honored to introduce our keynote speaker, Colette Pishon Battle. She's going to come up now. Hi, Colette. Welcome.
Thank you, Renee.
We are so excited to have you. And I don't know how much of an introduction Colette needs, but let me just talk briefly about what all of the things that she does for our community. So Colette's a generational native of Bayou Liberty, Louisiana. She's the founder and executive director of the Gulf Coast Center for Law and Policy. She develops her programming and she has expertise in equitable disaster recovery, global migration, community economic development, climate justice, and energy democracy. She's worked with a whole lot of people in a whole lot of places. She's a lead coordinator, was a lead coordinator for Gulf South Rising in 2015. She was an Obama Fellow. She has an honorary doctorate from Kenyon College. She's done a lot of work around Gulf South for a new Green New Deal. And she's just an all-around badass who we admire so much and appreciate. So I'm not going to spend any more time talking. I'm going to pass it over to Colette. Just like for the panel, please, if you think of any questions that you'd like to ask Colette, you can ask them in the Q&A box. And then I'm going to pop on with a few minutes left before we wrap up and ask her those questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Renee. It's an honor to be here. And I just want to start off with deep gratitude for both Renee, Kashana, the whole crew at Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center. Always good allies in this fight for justice. And it's always an honor to be asked to come and speak. I also love coming to speak here because I get the green light to say what the Spirit allows me to say. So Renee has given me the green light. And for those of you with whom I've been able to talk before with, I'm still me, so here it comes. And for those of you for whom I'm a new voice, I hope that you'll receive what I have to say with the love in which I'm intending it. And I hope you can hear the truth of what I would like to offer based in my own experiences here in South Louisiana, in the place I love the most, with the people I love the most. With that, to get started, I certainly want to acknowledge that I'm calling in from Slidell, St. Tammany Parish, the land of the Choctaw people. And it's an honor to be on this land. I'm on the land of my mother, her mother before, and my family has been in this place since the 1770s, even before the United States had its claims to this place. So it's an honor to be calling you in, or to be speaking from my rooted place and to offer some words today. I wanted to talk a little bit about the courage of transformation. And for me, this courage of transformation is really coming amidst a global climate crisis. And for all of the folks who know me, you know, climate is what I am always going to talk about. And climate encompasses so many things. And in order for us to make it through this current climate reality, we're going to have to address our housing issues in a fair and equitable way. But the broader picture on climate is one that I think more and more Americans especially are starting to let into their minds and into their hearts. And I am here to say you are right in the nick of time. This is an important conversation for everyone to understand. This is not a political discussion. This is a discussion about the reality of what's happening to our great state of Louisiana, what's happening across our beautiful nation, and what's happening to communities around the globe as they address this climate crisis. So I was thinking about courage, and I was thinking about courage mostly yesterday, watching the impeachment, the second impeachment of this nation's president, my nation's president. And I was waiting to see who was going to have the courage to speak the truth. And in fact, I was reminded of the first impeachment where I wondered the same thing after hearing beautiful legal summaries and orations, who was going to be moved to act out of courage, not self-interest, not fear, but courage. And then I've been thinking about 2020, a year when I think all of us had to find a deeper courage within ourselves to get through the daily grind of being in a pandemic, to get through uprisings that were catalyzed by brutal murders of Black people in our streets. And in South Louisiana, the courage to handle all of that in the midst of being in the cone of uncertainty over 11 times in a year where hurricanes topped the number of hurricanes ever recorded. So it was a year of courage, and clearly 2021 has shown that courage is going to be a major element of the work this year as well. But how do we get this courage? Yes, we should be very excited about the 10 people who had the courage to speak out yesterday, even having a Republican affiliation, to speak out against an attack on our Capitol. But there were over 100 who didn't speak against it. And that brings me deep concern. And I've just been thinking, what is my courage in this moment? What am I willing to do? And I ask you about yours. What are you willing to do in this moment? Where's your courage level? I know that each of you can see what's happening in our nation, what's happening in our community. It must have dawned on you once or twice what your role is in this moment. And I wonder how we will all show our courage. And I began to really think about it and understand courage not as a destination, but a process, and even more specifically, a practice. How do we begin to practice our courage and understand that we're going to have the courage to transform ourselves, our individual selves, our state, our nation, our economy, our society, the courage to transform that for a climate reality that if we do not do something about very quickly, we will not make it out of as a human race, not just as Louisianians, but as a human race. And so it's a practice. We got to practice like we practice anything else, right? It definitely means the first few tries we won't probably get right. But courage actually requires, I think, the commitment to the practice of us showing that when the time comes, we can and we will do the right thing. So it'll take you all the courage you have to admit that this one thing that I'm gonna say is more important than your comfort, your time, your ability to pay your bills, your ability to save your money, your ability to grow your family. But I want you to try to find the courage to hear this truth. And it's a truth that you'll feel in your body. Nobody survives without this planet. This air, this water, this sun, none of us survive without it. We all lose. And some of us lose first, and some of us lose hard. But at the end, we all lose if we don't have this planet. And climate change is about this planet, but it's also about our deeper societal traditions. It's about what we do every day. It's about who we are as a people, as a state, as a region. This climate change conversation is about the core of us. And climate change, to be clear, is not a topic. It's not an agenda item. It's not a debate. This is our humanity. It is our human existence we're talking about when we talk about climate change. We're not talking about will you be able to do the things you love. We're talking about everything around you not being able to exist because of the actions that humans are taking and doing on this planet right now. Climate change is not a debate. It's not a wedge issue. It's not a dissertation. The science, the math, the statistics all conclusively state not only is the climate changing, but humans are responsible for this ridiculous acceleration of change that is warming our entire planet. And we're seeing the effects of this, some places worse than others, but we're seeing the effects of this everywhere, and no more clearly than in South Louisiana. Climate change is not about the right or the left or the independents. Everybody across the political spectrum understands that this is a real issue. It is the money that has been pumped into your commercials and your radio commercials, your TV commercials, and all of these places where you get your information that make you question whether this is real, make you question whether this is your issue, and make you question how this connects to your everyday life. But let me be clear, this is your issue. If you are a person who lives in Louisiana, this is your issue. We are losing land at the rate of a football field every 45 minutes or so. We're losing land at one of the fastest rates on the planet. We're losing land not just because we are extracting oil and gas from delta created soil that will then submerge, but we are losing land because the sea around the globe is rising due to global warming. This is a reality. People are already moving. The housing issues that we see now are about to explode because people have to get out of harm's way. It is already here. It is already happening. It's time for you to come into this fight. And for those of you who are a little more skeptical, let me be clear. The Department of Defense has a plan for climate change. The oil companies have a plan for climate change. The Fortune 500 companies have a plan for climate change. Do you have a plan? What are you doing in your community? How are you addressing this issue? This is where our courage comes into play. Climate change is real. It's happening now. There were more than 26 storms. If you're from this area, they went through the alphabet and into another alphabet just to name the number of storms that formed in the Atlantic and in the Caribbean. It was the largest number of hurricanes ever on record, 2020. And it is when they clocked the warmest temperatures in the Gulf ever. This is our new reality. It's real, it's here, it's happening. And the courage to shift, the courage to address climate change is really the courage to shift how you think and how you move every day. You know, it's really difficult to have this conversation in South Louisiana in particular, because now I'm going to say something that'll really make you pause. Our fossil fuel industry, the one that so many of us have depended on for so long, I have benefited from, my family has benefited from, everyone I know has been in oil and gas. It is responsible for the harms to this planet. And so we are feeling right now the impacts of what our industry has given to this globe. Not only did it give us a house and a place to live and the ability to go to college, but it also is giving us an accelerated climate shift. And we have to be honest about that, because the conversations now turn into, wait, we have to choose jobs or our environment. No, y'all, we don't have to choose. We can actually choose ourselves. We can choose our community. We can choose our land, and we can choose our state. And there is nothing that the people of Louisiana cannot do when they put their minds to it. We don't have to choose between jobs and the environment. We have to create jobs that protect our environment. We have to create housing that can withstand a new climate reality. We have to start treating people with a level of human dignity that has never been seen in this country, but we all know is required and necessary to shift our community, to shift our economy, and to shift the way that we deal with each other. This is what we have to have the courage to do. And that practice is going to start with a little step, and it's going to grow into something much larger. And when a moment comes where someone tries to take our freedom, where someone tries to challenge our values, we will all have practiced courage enough to not go silent like we have seen in this country for the last week. We can't sit in shock and fear as attacks come against our humanity and our dignity and our survival. This is the issue for which we can get over ourselves, we can get past our ego, and we can come together. Survival is big enough and good enough for us to see each other, to deal with each other, and to get through the challenges of living together. Because we don't have a choice, we have to do it now. There is an international panel that put out a report that says we have 9 years. 9 years, write down 9 years and write down how old you'll be in 9 years. We have 9 years before we reach a point of no return with this climate crisis. And at that point, we will be in what's called a feedback loop that we cannot get out of. The warming that is happening will create warming, will create melting, will create rises, and we will not be able to get out of it. It's only going to create even more and even quicker challenges, faster moving challenges. We have to address this now. And addressing this now doesn't mean that you just throw a punch. Before you get into the struggle, you have to practice what courage is. You have to practice what courage means. And so now I want to ask, how is your courage showing up? How can you practice your courage today? Protecting our humanity, protecting our society, and addressing this climate crisis. I think it's going to be difficult. You're going to have a conversation with someone that you love about a topic that maybe they don't want to hear about because it's necessary right now. See, we don't get to climate justice. We don't get to real climate solutions without addressing past harms of this country. We don't get to real solutions and real agreement without acknowledging the past harms to the people of this nation. We don't get anywhere that we need to be without being courageous enough to tell the truth about the fact that this country is rooted in principles and values that are harmful to our existence as a humanity, as a human race, and to the existence of this planet and everything that's on it. This is not about Black or white, but this is about supremacy and oppression. And we have to examine and have the courage to examine the role of white supremacy and the role of oppression in the creation of our nation. And we have to examine how these same principles are being used to extract oil and gas out of our land, to extract coal out of our mountains and blow up mountains to get it out, to extract water from places where people need water. We have to examine the comfort that we get every day as Americans and the impact of those privileges and that comfort on our other fellow Americans, as well as the globe. It's important to understand that when you really get to the climate crisis, what's happening is that there's a whole bunch of greenhouse gases going into the air, and it's causing a blanket effect and it's warming our planet. But where are these greenhouse gases coming from? They're coming from these refineries. They're coming from oil and gas drilling. They're coming from petrochemical infrastructure and export terminals and pipelines. It's coming from these places where the front lines are fighting today, and they're wondering who is going to have the courage to stand with them. In order for us to transform our society, we're going to have to practice courage every day. And we're going to have to start demanding what the front lines are demanding, not because you just want to be down with who is cool to be down with right now. That's cute for a second, but that's not the fight. The struggle, the long-term struggle, is for you to understand that it's going to take all of us to save all of us. And the front lines are wondering when we're going to have the courage to show up and stand up. And if you don't go to that protest line, if you don't go to the place physically, then you have to engage by calling some of these decision makers and calling them out. It's your turn. People have put their bodies on the lines. People have died to stop these emissions from going into the air so the planet is okay. We cannot sit back comfortable while someone else fights our battle for us. In fact, I think all of us need to ignite that little fire of courage, start practicing it now. And when necessary, we need to come together and stave off the attacks on our humanity and our human dignity. If we want to survive, we're going to have the courage to tell this Biden administration to immediately stop the process of Line 3 pipeline in Minnesota. If we want to survive, we're going to have the courage to call our federal representation and say we want no new leases in the Gulf of Mexico. We want no new drilling in Louisiana. We want no more of this stuff that is destroying our planet. If we want to survive, we're going to have to fight in the state of Louisiana to say no to the Formosa plant, to say no to any more of these refineries, to say no to any more of these things next to these communities that are mostly Black and mostly poor and are being poisoned so we can be comfortable. If we want to survive, we're going to have to understand that this climate fight is tied to the housing fight, that this climate fight is tied to the jobs fight and the livable wage fight, that this climate fight is tied to the fight for queer liberation, for the fight for all of our liberation. We're going to have to understand that this permeates everything. And if we leave this fight to the courageous few, we will lose. We win only if we can ignite the courage in each of us and learn how to stay and stand together. This will not, friends, it will not be easy. I know it won't be easy. It's not easy right now. It's not easy to just say these words, but you know the truth of what I'm saying. And I know you can feel the truth of what I'm saying. The only thing that's lacking right now is our real understanding of the gravity of this climate crisis. This climate crisis is not contrived. It will not look like just hurricanes. It will not look like just fires. It will not look like just floods, but that is what happened in 2020. Peace to the people in the West Coast who lost everything to those 1727 fires. Peace to the people in the Midwest who lost everything to these floods that stopped planting from happening. And peace to the people in South Louisiana, South Texas, South Florida who got hit by these storms in a year with a record number of storms. It's happening, it's here, but it's not just that. In South Louisiana, we are going to have to worry about our people and heat stress. Who would have thought that the people who choose to live in the hot sunshine of Louisiana now have to worry about it getting too hot? The temperatures are rising, and our people are going to be left in their homes. And if you look at what happened in Lake Charles, when the hurricanes came through, they were out of electricity, they're out of water, and then there's an explosion of a chemical plant with toxic gas in the air. They say shelter in place. So you have no water, no electricity, nobody around. People have evacuated except you if you don't have money or if you can't just leave. And you can't go outside because we got so many toxic things around us that when the sea level rise and the storm and the winds hit these facilities, they kill us. They kill us. They open things up. Pipelines break. Refineries break. Explosions happen. This is what we have sold out our state to be. We can do better. We can do better, y'all, and we must do better. And it turns out now is the best opportunity for us to do better. Why not? Why not a Louisiana where everybody has livable wage jobs? Why not a Louisiana where the jobs that we provide for folks don't have to kill you? Why not a Louisiana where we can be proud of our politicians, where we can be proud of our leaders who say they are bringing something good to their people? Why are we fighting? Why are we sacrificing our very people, our income, our resources for 3 oil companies? Why are we sacrificing this for an industry that is on the decline? And let me be clear, if you paid attention to what happened to the earth as COVID made its wrap around this globe, the saddest thing to me as a climate advocate was to see that if humanity was slowed or stopped, that nature, in fact, could recover herself. The waters of Venice in Italy, they say, were never so clear. The air in Mumbai, India, they say, had never been that clear in a generation. Things got better because humans stopped putting all of their mess into the air. It's the hardest juxtaposition to live with as you listen to the number of people who are dying in order for us to just get to a place where we stopped harming our planet. We're back to the average numbers now. We're back to driving everywhere and flying everywhere, and we're back to turning our lights on and not caring where our energy comes from. We're back to, just looking at the water and not caring what chemicals are in there. But there was a moment in there, like every hurricane moment I know, and I know that some of you know what I'm talking about, right after that storm where we all become human to each other, not Black, not white, not woman, not man, just human, where we can actually ask and care about whether or not people are okay. That moment is possible after every storm. That moment is possible in the midst of crisis. That moment is necessary. And that moment is here. All we need now are those of us who are paying attention to have the courage, not just to change the world, but to change ourselves. This little bit of courage that is a practice, this little step that you can take, if we all take it together, we can become a mighty force. And I think that now is the time for us to do it. We have to have courage as a practice, and we have to understand that transformation is a lifelong commitment. We must transform how we live our lives every day, y'all. It's important for you to understand that the people who are representing you on the Public Service Commission, who manage your energy, who manage your electricity, it's important to understand that they have a role in mitigating the effects of climate change, not just getting your bills to be a particular amount every month. It's important for you to understand that these lawmakers who are representing us in DC, they have a role to play in mitigating the impacts of climate change, not just their own personal gain and not their own personal belief, but a demand from the people they represent to handle this. And we have what we need to handle it. That's the saddest part of it all. What we have are all of the technologies needed to move us from this coal and this gas and to move us from these antiquated systems into renewable energy systems. We have the technology, we have the ability. What we don't have is public will and political will to push for federal investment into that transition from fossil fuel-based economies to renewable energy economies. But that's where we gotta go. If your courage doesn't bring you to the front lines, let it at least allow you to pick up your telephone and call your representative and say, it's time to handle this. And this climate conversation is broader than just what it can do for you, because the climate conversation is rooted in a historic philosophy of this country, which is extraction. And we have to confront this. We do not want economies rooted in extraction or taking or theft. It's not ours to take. And if you believe in God, you know what I'm saying is true. It is not ours to take. It's not even ours to own. And peace to the indigenous nations who haven't just risen up and kicked us all out, because we don't have a right to own any of this stuff. It wasn't ours in the first place. But if we're gonna be here, if we're gonna stay here, then let us at least be the stewards that we are to be to this earth, to this land. And let's at least be the brothers and sisters that we are to be to each other. This starts by telling the truth. And that starts with a little bit of courage. And that little bit of courage, it doesn't just come to you in the moment, it's a practice. You have to start today. Today, I hope you'll have the courage to honor the Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center. I hope you'll tell somebody about this program, but I hope you'll tell somebody about the work they do. I hope today you'll have the courage to look around your community and see who's out there on the front lines on behalf of a broader community, but they're usually by themselves, waiting on people to care and show up. I hope that you will have the courage today to engage in one small way to advance human dignity in Louisiana, in the United States, and across the globe. But it's gonna take us moving now. We are out of time. We have no more time to waste. It's gonna take you lighting that fire today. And it's gonna take the work of all of us to save all of us. I'll just close by saying, we've been fed some lies. We've been fed some untruths. And one of those lies is that our independence is the same thing as individualism. That's not true, my friends. Our independence requires us to be able to rely on each other. This individualistic thing we got going on, I'll take care of myself. Good luck to you over there. I'll do what I need to do. I hope you make it. Good luck. It's not gonna work. The only way we all make it out is if we all care about each other. And I'm asking you to care even about communities and people that you might have been trained to not care about. It's important for us to understand that we have been fed lies. And if there is one lie bigger than individualism, it is that somehow, because of your education or your race or your income or your zip code, you have been told a lie that your life might be worth more than mine, or your life might be worth more than someone else's. But the truth of it is, your life is worth just the same as mine. No matter our mental health, our physical health, our abilities, our accomplishments, we are all equal. And I think that's the message of Dr. Martin Luther King. We cannot lose sight that we're all humans and we're all equal. And if we start that courage, that if we light that fire of courage, we'll get to that place where we understand we must value each other equally. And if we begin to value each other equally, we will begin to transform our society into the place, into the society that we know we've always deserved and we know we can be. We know we can be. I have faith. The gloom and the doom of the climate conversation has not broken my faith. In fact, it has made me have deeper faith in what humanity can do, and especially in what Louisiana can do. So I hope you will join me and the number of other climate activists and advocates across the nation and the globe in understanding that what we need from y'all, what we need from everyone, is the courage to engage in this conversation, the courage to engage in this struggle, the courage to understand that there is something bigger and greater than ourselves, the courage to debunk the lies, and the courage to stand together. This is what I'm hopeful for in 2021, despite all that we've seen just 14 days in. This is what I'm hopeful for, that we have the courage to transform our society amidst this climate change reality. I think we can do it. We're out of time. No more wishy-washy. Time to come in. And if we do it together, I believe we will win. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Colette. We had a great question come in, which I think is a perfect segue from what you're saying we need to do to us figuring out how to do it. So someone asked, what are some strategies? How can we really engage with people who don't believe in climate change, or people who oppose clean and renewable energy because of their connection to the oil and gas industry? Because we know that there's a lot of people in our community who are in one of those camps. So what are some ways we can help to move them and engage with them?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's the right question. Thank you for that. I don't walk into most communities speaking the word climate change. I walk out speaking climate change, but I don't walk in speaking climate change. Usually, especially in Louisiana, I walk in talking about what's blooming or what's growing. And I ask folks, how are your tomatoes? How are your azaleas? What have you noticed out in your yard? And folks will say, oh, well, it's really hot, or it's too much rain, or the azaleas are blooming too early, or the tomatoes aren't coming in right. Like there are things that folks can observe on their own. And it takes the politics out of the conversation, because that's really what you're up against. And it's hard. It's hard because industry has spent millions of dollars, and they spend millions of dollars a year making sure that they at least bring a question into your mind. They don't need to convince you that climate change isn't real, but they work to bring a question into your mind around climate change. And that's all that's needed, right? A little doubt, a little question, something to challenge. So don't start with the politics. Start with what we love. And how are those things changing? And how are we seeing change in our community? I think many people how many people in Louisiana would deny that this hurricane season was a bit crazy? It was a lot of hurricanes. Let's start there. Let's start from the reality of the thing. I think the next step out of that is why. Most people are just repeating what they were told. They don't have an analysis of the thing yet. Why do you not believe in climate change? What is it about climate change? Do you believe that it's raining more? Do you believe that your azaleas are blooming in a different time? Well, then why don't you believe this is happening? And then the third step, I think, when they start admitting things, because they will, people know what they know. Sometimes people just get to, well, that's what I've heard. And at that point, I think we all have an opportunity to acknowledge that we've learned some things that we need to unlearn, and that it's time for us to take responsibility in really finding out the truth. So this is not about me convincing you, but it is a journey of truth together. And I want to maybe offer that as a way to engage. And with regard to oil and gas, I mean, we're not going to convince the billionaires or millionaires of oil and gas that this industry is a problem. I wouldn't waste my time there. But there are oil and gas workers, many of whom are unemployed. And by the way, we're unemployed pre-COVID because the oil and gas industry is on the decline. And by the way, the oil and gas industry is investing in renewable energy too, because they understand that their product is on the decline. They just don't want you to know. They want you to stick with their product. They don't want you to know about this change that is coming. I say, let's go straight to the workers. Let's ask them what it is to work on these rigs. Let's ask them how much fear they have of an accident. Let's ask them how many of their friends they've lost to something blowing up, to something coming off, to something not being connected right. Peace to the folks we lost on Deepwater Horizon. Let's ask folks, what really has oil and gas given us other than money? And is there anything more than money? Is there anything greater to you than money? And if the answer is your life and your family and your place, then you're in. That means you're on my side. That means you're on my team. And I think we don't have to be so ginger about, like, we don't have to touch it so softly. I think we can start telling the truth with some boldness, but boldness doesn't mean we have to be disrespectful. I think that's where we get a little lost, right? It is frustrating to have someone not agree with us, especially when there's a truth, a deeper truth. But respect is not it's not negotiable. We should all be respectful in this process, and understand that it took time for people to get to where they are, and it'll take time for people to move away. So one piece of advice is to stay persistent. People see me coming and they're like, oh Lord, here comes climate again. And yeah, every time, in fact, everywhere I go, we could be drinking, dancing, and or about to go to sleep. And I'm talking about climate change because that's my commitment to this fight. And I want to really encourage you to take that on, because that's how big this problem is. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, and it looks like another question came in. If anyone else out there has a question for Colette, after this one, we'll have time for one more. So go ahead and get it in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. The next question is, how does the average citizen take action against large corporations? I think it feels like a really big struggle. So like, what are some small concrete steps someone could do this afternoon or tomorrow or next week?
Yeah, what a great question. What can the average person do? If you're one of those people who recycles and buys in bulk and doesn't use plastic, and thank you. Good job. Time to turn it up. If you're an individual person, it's time for you to understand that our collective voices is what will bring change. And there are a number of groups in Louisiana that are asking people to join them in a collective voice around this climate crisis. Some of them are working on energy. Some of them are working on water. Some of them are working on food. It doesn't matter to me which group you show up for, but it's time for regular folks. Yes, the folks who are working the 9-to-5 jobs. Yes, the folks who have kids every day. Yes, it's time for you to show up to the meetings, to the conversations, to the actions that are being collectively created by many of the groups that are on the front lines and are fighting. They're fighting your battle. It's time for you to join. You by yourself, not so effective. All of us together, we can make the transformation. We can create the transformation that we need, and we need you. And I want to encourage you to look up the Gulf Coast Center for Law and Policy. You can find us on the web. We're advancing Gulf South for a Green New Deal, which is a 5-state initiative looking at how we center workers and jobs as we address this climate crisis. We're working across the South with Southern Communities for a Green New Deal. I mean, folks are everywhere. We're just waiting on you to show up. And if we're not the right place for you, I know everyone around here, I know who to send you to. So please look us up. And for all of you wondering how to make your difference alone, the answer is we have to do this together. We have to do this together.
Thank you. The last question is, what keeps your passion for activism and organizing going strong?
Ooh, what keeps my passion? Well, shrimp. Shrimp, gumbo, conversations under the oak tree, Zydeco music, Creole language, Mardi Gras Indians, all of the things that we love, all of the things that we love are threatened right now. Everything that we love about this great state is being threatened by climate change right now. It is easy for me to stay impassioned about this because what I love is on the line. And so if what I love is on the line, that means that I'm willing to put myself on the line. That means I'm willing to do this every day for the rest of my life. That means I want to dedicate my life to saving not just this planet and not just the nation, but saving my home and saving the people who are from my home. Louisianians are the best people in the world. I've been many places around this world and I put my money on Louisiana people because at the end of the day, even in tension, even in conflict, we can laugh, we can smile, we can eat together, we can dance together, we can figure it out. My passion is really rooted in the potential of humanity that I find in Louisiana.
Thank you so much, Colette. A few more questions came in, but I'm sorry we're out of time. Could somebody put the Gulf Coast Center for Law and Policy website in the chat there so that if anyone wants to follow up with Colette and get more involved in her work or help find those people who are doing similar work in your community, she can help make those connections. And I just want to give a huge thank you to Colette Pishon Battle. Thank you so much for your keynote today.
Thank you.
I'm sure, again, if you could hear applause from the audience, they would be sending it your way. I want to also thank again our panelists from this morning, Ms. Sharon Levine from Rise St. James and Ms. Ledwina Hurst from the residents of Gordon Plaza. We so appreciate your work and your time and your expertise with us. I want to thank again Tester T, not just for the work that you've done recently, but for your years of commitment to the Fair Housing Action Center. It really makes a huge difference. And we admire your courage in completing the work that you've done. I want to also thank all of our attendees for logging in today. We know that Fit for a King virtually is different from what we've done before. And thank you so much for being willing to experiment with us. We miss seeing your faces, but we feel you as a part of our network and we appreciate you very much. When we finish today, when we go ahead and stop the webinar, you're going to get a pop-up to complete the evaluation for today. Please take just a minute to complete the evaluation. It won't take long, but we really pay close attention to what people say, and we use your feedback every year to try and improve our summit. The link is in the chat there. If you have to rush and do it a little bit later, we'll also send it out to you by email. If you're participating in the summit today in Spanish using interpretation, there is a link at the top of the survey to complete it in Spanish, and so you'll be able to do that as well. Also, we want to really ask that everybody out there in our network consider becoming a recurring donor to the Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center. This year has really shown us that we have to be agile and we have to be responsive to the needs of our community as they change. When things happen, we're in a really challenging climate, and your support helps to make that possible. So you can go to lafairhousing.org/donate to sign up as a recurring donor. Any amount, $5, $10 a month, makes a huge difference for us. And then we want to make sure that you don't miss the rest of Fit for a King. So this was just the first day. We have 2 more days. Next Thursday, January 21st at 11 a.m. again, we're going to ask you to log in using the same link. And our program is going to be talking about the connections, between policing and gentrification. Our keynote speaker is Shamika Parrish-Wright, and you can read all about her at fitforaking.org. And then the last day of our summit is going to be January 28th, where we're going to be talking about the eviction crisis. Right now, more than 30 million people all across the United States are at risk of eviction, and we need you to be involved to protect our neighbors and stop that from happening. So you can go to fitforaking.org to get more information. Thank you so much. Make sure to complete your evaluation, and we'll see you next week.